Hey there, this is Della Rucker. Thank you so much for joining me today. As you may know, I am the principal of the Wise Economy Workshop, which is a thinking and doing platform for creating future-ready communities. I'm also the author of the book, The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived, What's Changed and How You Can Help. Today has been a rather strange day in a lot of respects, particularly for a Monday morning. Usually Monday morning is, for most of us is, let's get everything done for the week. And I got kind of blindsided a little bit by my own brain. But it wasn't just my own brain. It was these things. So for those of you who are not flower people, these are hyacinths. They smell divine. They smell sort of sweet and fresh at the same time. And these came out of my yard. I plant more of these every year because they were my mother's favorite flower. And so every spring, when I get, my first few whiffs of hyacinths, it's very strange, isn't it, how smell works for us. We remember things, we connect to things when we smell something that doesn't happen when we see or hear, or a lot of other ways that we kind of connect to our memories. So for me, and I almost never pick hyacinths because I want them to grow and thrive. But when there's ones that are laying over on their sides, which happens a lot of times because the blossom part is really heavy, I bring them in, I'll break those stems off and I'll bring them inside. And the scent for me a lot of times is almost, it kind of derails my brain a little bit. So I had started previously working on a new book, which is a memoir. It's going to be kind of a sort of non-linear sort of walk through my personal and professional experiences and kind of trying to draw out of those some lessons or some implications, some ideas, some thoughts at least, on what it means to love and care for a place, particularly setting that in the context of what it means to love and care for people. So far, I'm only in the beginning stages of it. I don't have a time frame for you yet, but so far it's already it's a much more emotional, much more kind of vulnerable sort of writing that I really haven't done very much of. And I'm thinking a lot about the fact that the world that we live in, the lives that we live in our communities aren't just about our brains, they're about our hearts and our souls and about our love. And so that's been kind of already on my mind. And then this morning, I picked some hyacinths, and all of my to-do list for today, other than this video, is so far kind of gone out the window. So in thinking about, but couple of quick things before we talk about today's first principle. And one of those is this question of a memoir. So I want to ask you two questions, and you can put these in the comments. You can send them to me later, whatever works for you. But I'm curious as to whether there's stories or things that you've heard from me previously that you'd like me to kind of expand on, tell me more about something. And also if there's particular sort of issues that kind of are in this universe of what does it mean to care for and love a community of people in a place. If there's things that you can say, hey, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on on such and so, I'd be really thrilled to have those. I don't have a time frame for that memoir. It sort of, came up on me sort of sideways, where when you're a writer, sometimes you just kind of churn it out and do it, and it'll come out fine. But every once in a while, when the inspiration is very rare, but when it hits, you realize after a while that, holy crud, I got to grab that while it's available, because it's so fleeting and so rare. And so I've learned over a lot of great ideas that I've lost over time, that when something hits you and you really feel moved to write about something, that you darn well better go do it. So again, the memoir was not on my timeline. I don't even have a name for it yet. Usually I have names pretty early in the process, but I got nothing so far. But so that's going to be coming up. I've got a couple other notes here, so let me take a peek down. The other thing that I've started working on, and again, this is very early, very upstream, is that several people have requested an audiobook version of The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived. Thumbs up. I'm, as most of you probably know, I'm a speaker. In addition to being a writer, I've done a lot of public speaking, and I really enjoy doing that kind of thing. So I've never been one to read my own work a lot. I do that here to make it easier for these videos to make sense. But I've not typically been one who wants to read my own work. And invariably, when I read my own work, I end up changing it. So I'm like tweaking the language. I never stop being an editor. It's annoying. So I'll tweak the language as I go. But I have been in the process of doing the recordings. I'm not terribly far along yet, but again, we're working on an audio version, and we should have that out. My hope is to have that out within the next month or so. So, God willing and the creek don't rise, as the old saying goes. That's a couple of the things that I'm working on. The last thing that I wanted to point out to you all today is that the WiseFool Digest and the free WiseFool monthly newsletter will both be coming out pretty soon. WiseFool Digest, which is a digest and an analysis of some kind of stories that you might have missed, but that really give us some insight into what this emerging fusion economy looks like on the ground in our local communities, how we can change the work that we do. That comes out once a week, so that'll be coming out probably tomorrow, and I super enjoy producing that. So that's coming out. That is available to subscribers at my Substack, which is wiseeconomy.substack.com. Very inexpensive way to get some great insight and some great food for your brain. In addition to that, the free Wise Economy newsletter, WiseFool, the WiseFool, is coming out within the next, probably the next week or so. Probably going to wait until a lot of people are on holiday this weekend, or this week rather. So I'll probably wait until early next week on that one. But if you're interested in getting more information about the variety of work that's going on within the WiseFool platform and the WiseFool or the Wise Economy platform, gotta get my branding right here, right? The Wise Economy platform and the Wise Economy network of organizations, that newsletter might be very, very useful to you. So you could sign up either for the freebie or for the full kahuna at wiseeconomy.substack.com. So there's my plug for the day. Oh, one more thing. So as part of the Wise Economy workshop, I'm also developing a new series. and that's going to be I piloted it last year. It's called Accelerate Us: Dispatches from the Front Lines of the Local Economy Revolution. I'm kicking that off again. In addition to doing one-on-one interviews, I'm also looking to do sort of salon style discussions, particularly around really sort of difficult, meaty topics where, you know, we can really have some real conversation about what works and what doesn't work. And right now, I'm looking particularly for women, either women who identify as white or women of color, who would be interested in having a conversation about kind of the real life of being a woman and working for and advocating for the future of our communities, and particularly about kind of sharing ideas and insights and what happens when, as a woman in this space, you put your ideas, you put your thoughts, you put your perspective out into the public realm. So I'm looking for women who want to participate in that. If you are one, or if you have somebody that you would like to recommend that you'd really like to hear from, I don't care what their professional background is. I don't care what their perspective is. I don't care, you know, whether they're an active professional or they're a volunteer or they're whatever. But I'm looking for people who are willing to have a real honest conversation. So if you got anybody else, if you got anybody like that in mind, send me a message because I'm looking for them. So with all of that stuff out of the way, let's talk about that first principle. So as I've said on a lot of these videos, the key challenge that this book lays out is less about technical change and less about, do you use this program or do you use that program? Should we have this kind of incentive or should we have that kind of incentive? But there's a lot of that out there. And when I wrote this book, I was really trying to get at the point that if we just change the tools, but we don't change the mindset, the thinking, the approach, the sort of fundamentals in a manner that jives better with this new evolving and developing and very fast developing world that we are moving into, then we're kind of wasting our time. We have to be able to reframe the work that we do. And so, and to finish that thought, to reframe it in a manner that puts in front of us, these are the fundamental things that we're trying to achieve now that might be very different from what we were trying to achieve 20, 30, 40 years ago. And based on that knowledge, how then do we change the things that we do? So one of the sort of keystones of this book, The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived, is this idea of first principles. And first principles are kind of that foundation, that bedrock. They're the core principles, the core characteristics. And that's not intended to be like a 10 Commandments sort of thing, but it is intended to kind of make awareness of those fundamentals very visible to us as we work, and to put them kind of really front and center so that we can remember them and we can capitalize on them. Because for us as humans, one of the easiest things that we do is fall back into our old habits. And that's actually not only the point of the book and of the first principles, but that's specifically the point of the one that we're going to talk about today. And of course, I put the book down and lost the page. Here we go. Change requires more than a lever. It requires a system. Impact, even on something relatively simple, like getting healthy food to a neighborhood, requires system thinking, not just doing stuff. Too often, well-intentioned people think that if we just do this one thing, build a grocery store, recruit a big business, fix up the riverfront, build an innovation hub, whatever that means, then magic will happen. But we have a lot of people who are doing those one things in more or less isolation. And that has given us a disjointed landscape where a huge amount of energy is expended for often rather unimpressive results. Most of the time, the one thing doesn't live up to its billing because we assumed that X would cause Y. Without carefully defining and working on the intervening steps that were necessary to convert a new resource to a desired outcome. Instead of making the assumption that X is just going to cause Y, we need to walk carefully through the steps that will be needed to get from X to Y, preferably in full partnership with the people who are already living in the spaces between those letters. And preferably with a careful eye out for the potential unintended consequences that can develop when we intervene in a human ecosystem carelessly. So that's a tough one. That is very often a tough one for reasons that range from political wins to, we fall in love with the project idea. We really like, I don't care if you're a volunteer or you're a professional, we really like sort of the big project. We like the thing that we're going to be able to put our name on or put the boss's name on. That helps too. We really glom onto the potential and the possibility of that big project, because a lot of times it's like in other places I talk about, loving an idealized little baby. If you're looking at a baby on a billboard and you go, oh, that's so cute, that's, I can't actually do that. And I do that. I'm a sucker for babies, but it's very different to love an abstract, kind of idealized, airbrushed baby than it is sometimes to love the one that's in your hands, that's screaming and crying and colicky and can't settle down and, creating diaper disasters and God knows what. But the challenge is that when we love a project, when we get into an idealized situation where we're like, we just need to build this thing, we just need to put this, grocery store in the neighborhood. That's, a surprisingly common example, that if we put a grocery store in this neighborhood, then it's going to change everybody's behavior. And over and over and over again, when you actually go back and look at what happened, the grocery store didn't change the behavior. The park didn't necessarily create the health outcomes that the grant application said that it would. The convention center, I hate to pick on that kind of example because that's one that we diss on a lot in planning and economic development, at least, rabble-rouser types do. But invariably, they don't create the monster impact that we were told that they would. And I think a huge piece of that is because people don't change behavior based on a lever. Just because you push me to do something doesn't mean that I'm going to change my behavior. Think instead about what happens when we try to eat healthier and lose weight. Definitely is something that I need to be working on. If all I say to myself is, I know that it's very important for me to lose weight and eat healthier, and I'm going to start doing that. What's the odds that I actually pull that off? Not much. Because I may have the willpower, but I don't have the systems in place to act on my willpower. So what do I need to have? Maybe I need to have a calendar where I'm, identifying on each day. Maybe I have an app for tracking my diet. Maybe I have an app that, tells me how many steps I've walked today and kind of gives me a little nag to say, oh, you're only 450 steps from meeting your goal for today. You can do a little more, can't you? Can't you? Can't you? If you just said that in a void, it would mean nothing. I would blow it off. But if it's part of a system that I've committed to, then I'm much more likely to actually take that prodding as a serious motivation for work. So we kind of understand that personally. And I'm, like I said, I am exhibit A in good intentions, bad follow through when it comes to that. And I really need to build those kind of systems, not just say, yeah, I'm going to start doing yoga tomorrow. Yeah, I am really. I'm going to start doing yoga. And then weeks and weeks and weeks go by. And I am literally telling tales on myself right now. And I don't start that yoga. If we don't have a system, if we don't have, and systems involve a couple of things. They involve process. There's going to be a routine of how this works. They involve reminders, things that connect our brains to that process. And they require accountability. I'm going to get a little nag from the app or my friend who, I'm going to the class with. She's going to be ticked at me if she goes and I don't show up. So it's when we think about how to enable change in our communities, maybe what we want to do is to break down barriers between different racial and ethnic and socioeconomic groups. I've actually been seeing that showing up more and more and more in comprehensive plans and community plans of all sorts of types, where they're starting to identify that social cohesion is something that needs to be worked on. Well, you're not going to change that by just having a big event and having everybody sing Kumbaya. Making that kind of change, especially when it's hard and scary and difficult and you don't feel like doing it, and it would be much easier to just stay at home on the couch. Those are the kind of changes that more than ever really necessitate a system that fosters and promotes and pushes and nudges us into that change. Not just once, not just twice, but consistently over and over and over again. And far too often in the work that I have touched as both a professional and as a volunteer, we do the thing, but we don't create the system. So my encouragement, my challenge to you is to think about that system. How do we not just do a thing, but create a system, create a process that brings people along on the behavior change that we're trying to enact? Because ultimately, that's what everything that we're doing in our communities. When we're trying to make our communities better, we're really trying to change behavior, change maybe our own behavior, the behavior of members of our communities. We're trying to enact that kind of change. And that requires, it necessitates a system. So I would personally love to hear your thoughts about where you're seeing system work play out in the communities that you care about, where you're seeing system thinking maybe not play out in the communities that you care about, and your thoughts particularly on how that process of bringing people along on the system of change can be better implemented in the places that we care about. So thank you again for taking the time to listen today. If this sounded good to you, you probably would enjoy this book. The Local Economy Revolution has arrived. It's available, at least for order, probably not just sitting around in the bookstore, but it's available any place that you get books. It is my favorite platforms for making it available are Gumroad and Lulu.com. You can Google those. Gumroad, Local Economy Revolution has arrived. Lulu, Local Economy Revolution has arrived, available both physically and digitally. If you're an Amazon user, you can get the Kindle version or the print version at Amazon. You know how to do that. And if you prefer to buy hardcover books, or, well, it's a paperback, but if you prefer to buy physical books from your local bookseller, which I would encourage everybody to do because they are so intrinsic and so crucial to our communities, you should be able to order that book as well from your local bookstore. So again, thank you so much. Oh, and if you want to talk more about not just these ideas in sort of, you know, the more general manner that we do in the Local Economy Revolution has arrived, but you really want to start getting into some of the sort of active issues that are playing out today, be sure to join me at that Substack, wiseeconomy.substack.com. I think you will find that very worth your while and very worth the small cost of participating. And it certainly will mean a lot to me. Your listening and your response and your caring is what makes this work possible. And I've never been more grateful for that than these days. So thank you again. And as I always tell folks, you go get them. Have a great day.